Living Colour are a supremely underrated band. All four members are so good, and it's criminal that they haven't been given their flowers as much as they deserve. Vernon Reid, their guitarist especially, doesn't get recognised for just how good of a guitarist he really is. Although he did make number 42 on that awful new Rolling Stone list, so there's that. That doesn't say that they haven't found any success. They have, but they should really be at the front of everyone's mind when talking about the great hard rock bands, especially the 1980s. While the band have lots of good songs, one of their songs has been by far the most defining of their career, Cult of Personality. It's got nearly 10 times the streams on Spotify, their next most listened song. So in this video I'm going to take a deep dive into why this song is so good, and perhaps it'll inspire you to check out some more of their work. Cult of Personality doesn't begin with the riff or singing or any instrument. It begins with a sample of Malcolm X. Malcolm X was one of the figures that the band had in mind when writing Cult of Personality, and the band had actually wanted to use an excerpt of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking as well, but were denied the sampling rights. Vernon Reid talks a lot about the concept of the Cult of Personality within the civil rights movement, obviously something very pertinent to them as one of the most prominent all-black rock bands. Malcolm X was an eloquent speaker and articulate leader, but also a handsome face and someone easily made into an icon. Marcus Garvey was a powerful figure whose ideas of black separatism and Pan-Africanism proved fundamental for the later civil rights movement. But he's also easy to make an icon in his military garb, irrespective of his ideas. And this is a concept that exists in the world of Living Colour themselves too. Vernon Reid talks about how Corey Glover, Living Colour's lead singer, was voted in Playgirl's 10 Sexiest Rock Stars, and how much this image has played a role in their career separate from their actual work. The excerpt of Malcolm X's speech is actually somewhat edited. Here it is without the middle bit cut out.
And during the few moments that we have left, we want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Delivered in 1963, this was one of Malcolm X's last speeches before leaving the Nation of Islam, and it pretty much outlined his black nationalist philosophy, delivering some scathing remarks about Martin Luther King's more moderate approach. Obviously, rock and roll was originally in African American music, think Chuck Berry, Little Richard, etc. But by the time that Living Colour released Cult of Personality in 1988, the particular brand of hard rock that Living Colour found themselves in was, by this point, a white idiom. Lenny Kravitz was yet to break onto the scene, and whilst people like Prince were playing rock, they weren't as deep into the hard rock, and somebody like Hendrix was like 2 decades earlier. For an all-black hard rock band to break out with a song like Cult of Personality, to open for the Rolling Stones, win 3 Grammys, and get a double platinum album was particularly remarkable for the late 80s. Cult of Personality came out in 1988, the same year that Living Colour's bassist Muzz Skillings and Guns N' Roses got into a backstage confrontation over racist lyrics in the song One in a Million. Hard rock wasn't exactly a progressive space. Critic Tavi Nyong'o said that part of the song was capturing this experience of blackness in a sea of whiteness. Anyway, after this Malcolm X excerpt is heard, the music begins. The song sits at a mid-tempo 92 beats per minute, and is based around a tonic note of G. Let's first talk a little bit about this main iconic guitar riff, which is actually the guitar and bass riff, since pretty much the whole time the main riff is played, the guitar and bass play in unison. It's basically just this short 5-note pattern played twice. The only notes in it are G, D, F natural, and E, so it's impossible to tell exactly what mode of G the riff is played in. The fact that we have both F naturals and E naturals hint at a Mixolydian or Dorian sound, but the fact that we don't hear either a B or a B flat makes it impossible to tell which. It's actually a little bit more fiddly to play than it sounds. A lot of people play it like this, pulling off from the F to the D, because it's a little bit easier to do it that way. But when Vernon Reid plays it, he plays it like this, actually using his index finger to play 3 of the 4 notes. With the level of distortion on the guitar, it's a bit harder than it sounds to both tilt your hand to play both the F and the G with this same index finger without them overlapping, and also moving the whole hand down a fret to play the E. To be honest, I'm not sure why he doesn't just play the open position pulling off version. It's easier, sounds pretty much the same, and it allows him to keep it all in the one position without actually having to shift his hand. But, you know, he's Vernon Reid, one of the best guitarists in the world, so he can do what he wants. To be honest, I'm not sure why he doesn't just play the open strings. It's easier, sounds pretty much the same, and allows him to keep it all in one position without shifting his hand. But he is Vernon Reid, one of the best guitarists in the world, so he can do what he wants. Reid described the riff as having a Led Zeppelin-esque quality to it, and if you compare the riff from Cult of Personality with that of songs like Immigrant Song or Heartbreaker, you can see why. first really noteworthy moment comes 5 bars in, where the time signature switches to 3/4 to play a sort of expanded version of the main riff. Here it's noteworthy for introducing some B naturals, giving a little bit more harmonic variety before the very Dorian verse begins. This little time signature change will also become more important later. We get led into this first verse by this little drum fill, and this same one is heard a few times across the song. It's just a drum fill, but it plays in rhythmic unison with the bass and guitar, and this becomes more obviously important as the song goes on, because one of the main reasons that Cult of Personality is such a good song is the extreme contrast between the very tight and precise nature of some parts of the song, and the extremely wild, free and loose nature in others. During the first verse, we hear the refrain a few times, in which power chords and vocal harmonies help give the texture a little bit more thickness over the song's title. These backing vocals harmonise above the main vocals in thirds, and these E's heard in the backing vocals are the only times in the whole song that any of the vocal parts sing anything outside of G minor pentatonic. In their article Pedagogy in Popular Music, Thomas Burns and Teresa Martinez say that the song outlines Max Weber's view of leadership, but with a more cynical view of charismatic leadership. The lyrics mention specifically Mussolini, Kennedy, Gandhi, and Stalin. Stalin's mention is particularly significant as the title of the song was drawn from Nikita Khrushchev's secret speech, or by its official name, on the Cult of Personality and its consequences, in which the relatively new leader denounced his predecessor, Joseph Stalin. It wasn't the first time that the term Cult of Personality was used, and it wasn't even the first time that it was used in a political context, but it was this instance in which the band specifically drew on for the title of the song. If you are enjoying this video, it would really help the channel out to leave a like and a comment, because I always love hearing what you have to say. Also, make sure to subscribe. If you're enjoying this, then you'll surely love some of the videos I've got coming up, so also make sure to turn notifications on. As we move into the pre-chorus, we get another time signature change. Well, sort of. Remember the time signature change from earlier? We get the same thing here. The guitar and the bass move into 3/4, repeating the same riff from the 3/4 bar earlier. However, this time it's expanded upon. But all this time the drums keep playing in 4/4 with their simple kick-snare pattern, creating something called polymeter. This is why the drums slip in and out of sync with the guitar and bass. The drums, playing 4 beats in a bar, play for 3 bars, and the guitar and bass, playing 3 beats in a bar, playing for 4 bars, meaning that by the time 12 beats has passed, they are perfectly synced up again, ready for the chorus. The chorus is basically just a series of plagal cadences, moving around the circle of fifths clockwise B flat, F, C, G, D, A, and then finishing with one final one going F, C. The guitar and bass parts in the chorus are totally different to the unison riff and the verses. The guitar plays much higher in its register, arpeggiating the triads an octave or 2 higher than the riff. The bass part remains low, though occasionally jumping higher up, and it remains bouncy and lively with lots of little chromatic runs at the end of lots of the bars. In a tweet from 2022, Vernon Reid calls this bass part, played by Muzz Skillings, the epitome of the perfect day of its writing. Near the end of the chorus, Vernon Reid plays this little leap. It's a subtle thing, but it sounds great and it's a sign of some of the slightly wilder guitar parts still to come. After the chorus, we get a very short guitar solo, just 4 bars long. It's very rhythmically varied, from triplets to longer held out notes to these demi-semiquavers. The vibrato bar here is also pretty heavily used, a bit of a staple for the solos in this song. Some quite extreme bending is allowed because of this, and the solos are pretty chromatic too, such as these D flats and A flats, the flat 5 and flat 9 respectively, over the G. This is the contrast between the tight and the wild that I was talking about earlier. The chorus certainly feels looser than the restriction of the riff, played with all possible metronomic regularity, but the explosive burst of the solo allows for the song to properly let loose. Since we're talking about guitar solos, let's talk about the main guitar solo. The beginning of the solo takes place in this little bar of 6/4, or 2/4 and 4/4, it doesn't really matter how you count it. The solo's pretty wild. Normally I transcribe everything in all of my videos myself, but full disclosure here that I have just nabbed the solo transcription from this guy, since otherwise it would be weeks before I finish the video. He's linked in the sources in the description if you're interested. The solo is over the verse riff, then the chorus chords, and then the verse riff again. Vernon Reid broadly plays in G Dorian for the first bit, with a bend leading into really dense demi-semiquavers. In this video talking about the solo from 2019, The Art of Guitar described the solo as kind of like a Jackson Pollock painting, that Reid picks out an area on the fretboard and then essentially splatters random notes within that area, in contrast to the tightness of the verses. This has turned out to be quite an apt comment, because 2 years later, Vernon Reid said that Jackson Pollock was one of the people who inspired his work in this song. But he also said names like Sonny Sharrock and Robert Fripp were big influences on the solo, and this isn't surprising at all. Vernon Reid may be one of the most versatile guitarists about. The New York Times called him one of New York's best connected musicians. How many people can say they played with everyone from Public Enemy to Santana to Bill Frisell? In fact, he's got a whole album of avant-garde jazz with Bill Frisell from a few years before Cult of Personality, called Smash and Scatteration. Reid's jazz guitar teachers included Ted Dunbar and Rodney Jones. He has more of a background in jazz than people who only know his work with Living Colour might realise. This jazz background comes through on Cult of Personality. In bar 75, for example, every note apart from F sharp can be heard somewhere, really intense chromaticism harkening back to his free jazz background. To be honest though, it doesn't sound super chromatic, because Reid is playing so fast that it sounds more just like a blur washing over the listener as a wave, rather than each individual note sticking out. One of Reid's big influences was free jazz pioneer Ornette Coleman. In fact, he says that Living Colour as a whole is indebted to Coleman, since playing with Ronald Shannon Jackson, who in turn played with Coleman, influenced Reid so much. Listen to some of Coleman's saxophone playing, and hear how the guitar on Cult of Personality has been influenced by this. And this might be a bit of a stretch, but when Ornette Coleman died in June 2015, Vernon Reid described his music as profoundly tied to the notion of liberty, and that he set a lot of people free. But it isn't all just jazz influence. Cult of Personality isn't even close to a jazz song. The rapid, distorted guitar playing is a hallmark of the hard rock or metal language that the song sits in, and there's also a really heavy use of the vibrato bar, used so intensely in places that it almost gives a kind of engine revving sound. Towards the end of the song, we get some more backing vocals, quite hard to hear in the mix, but helping the section to be a little thicker than the other parts. The refrain is stretched across 4 bars before the opposite happens, condensing the refrain as just half a bar. Corey Glover, the singer here, playing with the same melodic material, stretching and condensing it rhythmically. It sounds like the song ends here, but then the song revs up for one more little polymetric run. This time, however, the drums go into double time, injecting a last bit of energy into the song before it ends. Ending with this great bit with the guitar, bass and drums all play in rhythmic unison, going to a different drum with each repeat before the song ends. Cult of Personality is a great and iconic song. It's certainly made its mark on popular culture. If you ever played GTA San Andreas or ever watched CM Punk wrestle, then you'll have heard the song. Living Colour's rise to fame in the late 80s grew greatly with them opening for the Rolling Stones, and if you enjoyed this video, then you'll surely also enjoy this video on screen about the Rolling Stones song Gimme Shelter. Thanks so much for watching. Again, do like, comment and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next time.